Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight. Proverbs 3 verses 5 to 6. Many times in our journey of faith, we face situations that don't make sense to us. It could be an unexpected illness, a financial loss, a difficult relationship, or even a tragedy that shakes up our plans. In these moments, it's tempting to rely solely on our own understanding and try to figure things out on our own. However, the Bible teaches us to trust God with all our hearts, even when things don't seem to make sense. Lord, this morning I come to you with a heart full of trust, even when the circumstances around me don't make sense. I know that your ways are higher than my ways, and your thoughts are higher than my thoughts. Isaiah 55 verses 8 to 9. Even though I may not understand everything that is happening, I choose to believe that you are in control and that your plans for me are for good and not for evil, to give me a future and a hope. Jeremiah 29 verse 11. Lord, help me not to lean on my own limited understanding, but to acknowledge your presence and your guidance in all my ways. I know that even when everything seems to be falling apart, you are working on my behalf and leading me along your right paths. Grant me the wisdom and patience to wait on your perfect timing, trusting that you will make my path straight according to your will. Lord, this morning I am reminded of the story of Abraham, who was promised that he would be the father of many nations, even when his wife, Sarah, was still childless. Genesis 12 verse 2. He trusted your word and followed you, even when it didn't make human sense. And in your timing, you fulfilled your promise and gave him a son, Isaac. Help me to have the same unshakable faith as Abraham, Lord. When circumstances seem impossible, remind me of your sovereignty and your love. Even when I can't see your plan, I choose to trust that you are working on my behalf. Grant me the courage to keep moving forward, knowing that you are with me, guiding my steps. Lord, I also think of the story of Job, who lost everything, yet continued to trust in you. Job 1 verse 21. He knew that you are good and just, even when his life seemed to be falling apart. Help me to have the same attitude as Job, praising you and glorifying your name, even when things don't make sense. Lord, I also remember the story of Joseph, who was sold into slavery by his own brothers, yet continued to trust in your sovereignty. Genesis 50 verse 20. He knew that you were in control, even when everything seemed to be going wrong. And in the end, you exalted him and used him to save many lives. Help me, Lord, to have the same perspective as Joseph. When things don't make sense, remind me that you are in control and that your plans are greater than I can imagine. Enable me to see your hand at work, even in the darkest moments, knowing that you are leading me toward a greater purpose. Lord, I also think of the story of David, who was anointed king but had to wait years for you to place him on the throne. 1 Samuel 16 verse 13. During that time, he faced persecution, betrayal, and many challenges, but he never stopped trusting in you. Help me to have the same patience and perseverance as David, knowing that you are preparing me for your plans. Lord, this morning, I am also reminded of the story of Daniel, who was taken captive to Babylon, but still continued to trust in you and live according to your principles. Daniel 1 verse 8. He faced challenges and persecution, but he never stopped praying and remaining faithful to you. And in the end, you exalted him and used him mightily. Help me, Lord, to have the same determination and courage as Daniel. When circumstances seem to be against me, remind me that you are with me and that your grace is sufficient to sustain me. 2 Corinthians 12 verse 9. Grant me the strength to stand firm in your ways, even when the world around me seems to be falling apart. Lord, I too am reminded of the story of the 3 Hebrew children who were thrown into the fiery furnace for refusing to worship idols. Daniel 3 verses 16 to 18. They trusted in you, even when their situation seemed hopeless. And you miraculously delivered them, showing your power and faithfulness. Lord, this morning I am also reminded of the story of Paul, who was imprisoned and persecuted because of his faith in you. Acts 16 verses 25 to 34. Even in the midst of adversity, he continued to praise and trust in your sovereignty. And through his life and testimony, many people were saved and your kingdom was advanced. Help me, Lord, to have the same determination as Paul, so that even when things don't make sense, I can continue to proclaim your goodness and love. Grant me the courage to stand firm in my faith, knowing that you are with me, empowering me, and using me for your glory. Lord, I too am reminded of the story of Stephen, who was stoned for his faith in you, Acts 7 verses 54 to 60. Even in the face of death, he continued to trust in your sovereignty and prayed for those who persecuted him. His life and testimony had a powerful impact, leading many to convert and follow you. Lord, this morning I am also reminded of the story of Jesus, your beloved Son, who faced the cross and death, even when all seemed lost, Matthew 26 verses 36 to 46. He knew that his sufferings had a greater purpose, that his death would bring about the redemption of humanity. And in the end, you raised him from the dead, showing your power over death and your victory over sin. Help me, Lord, to have the same perspective as Jesus, knowing that your plans are greater than I can comprehend. When circumstances seem bleak, remind me of your obedience and trust in you, even in the face of the cross. Grant me the grace to follow in your footsteps, accepting your will, even when it doesn't make sense to me. Lord, I also remember the story of the early Christians, who faced persecution, imprisonment, and even martyrdom because of their faith in you, Acts 5 verses 40 to 42. They continued to gather, pray, and proclaim your name, even when the odds seemed against them. And through their witness, your kingdom continued to expand. Lord, this morning I am reminded of so many other stories of your faithful servants who trusted you, even when circumstances didn't make sense. Men and women like Moses, Ruth, Esther, Nehemiah, and so many others who, despite hardships, remained steadfast in your word and your will. Help me, Lord, to have the same unwavering faith as these servants of yours. When things don't seem to make sense, remind me of your sovereignty and your love for me. Grant me the courage to keep moving forward, knowing that you are with me, guiding my steps and fulfilling your perfect plans for my life. Lord, I know that, just like these servants of yours in the past, I too will face times when my faith will be tested. But this morning, I choose to trust you with all my heart. Even when I cannot understand your ways, I surrender to you, knowing that you are good, just, and faithful. Lord, this morning I surrender myself to you, trusting in your wisdom and purpose, even when things don't make sense. I know that you have better plans than I can imagine, and that your thoughts are higher than my own, Isaiah 55 verses 8 to 9. Help me, Lord, not to lean on my own limited understanding, but to acknowledge your presence and your guidance in all my ways. Grant me the patience and perseverance to wait on your perfect timing, knowing that you are working on my behalf. Lord, I remember the words of Jesus, who said, "Do not let your hearts be troubled. If you believe in God, believe also in me," John 14 verse 1. Help me to have that same trust, even when circumstances seem out of control. Remind me that you are the sovereign God, who controls all things and works everything for the good of those who love you, Romans 8 verse 28. Lord, this morning I am reminded of the words of the Apostle Paul, who said, "I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me," Philippians 4 verse 13. I know that with your power and grace, I can face any challenge, even when things don't make sense. Help me to lean on your strength, not my own. Lord, I am also reminded of the words of Solomon, who said, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding," Proverbs 3 verse 5. Help me to put my trust completely in you, knowing that you have a perfect plan for my life, even when I can't see it. Lord, I know that, like your servants of old, I too will face times when my faith will be tested. But this morning, I choose to trust in you with all my heart. Even when circumstances don't make sense, I surrender to you, knowing that you are good, just, and faithful. Enable me to stand firm in my faith, proclaiming your goodness and love, no matter what situations I may face. Lord, this morning I am reminded of the words of the psalmist, who said, "Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me," Psalm 23 verse 4. Even when the shadows of doubt and fear loom large, help me to remember your presence and your faithfulness. Lord, I know that, like David, there will be times when I feel as though I am walking through the valley of the shadow of death. But in those times, help me to trust in your rod and your staff, knowing that they will comfort and guide me. Psalm 23 verse 4. Grant me the courage to keep moving forward, even when the darkness seems to close in on me. Lord, I am also reminded of the words of Jeremiah, who said, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans for peace and not for evil, to give you a future and a hope." Jeremiah 29 verse 11. Help me to hold on to that promise, knowing that your plans for me are for good and not for evil, to give me a future and a hope.